Welcome back to the Next Level You podcast, where we help you build the bridge between your now and your next. I'm your host, Myria Johnson.
Hello, I'm Dr. Miriam Johnson, your co-host and co-visionary. We are glad to have you here with us for part 2 of our conversation on fear.
In part 1, we talked about fear as a nervous system response. We talked about how fear shows up in work, technology, change, and uncertainty. And while naming fear is powerful, fear does not disappear once you recognize it. Fear evolves. It moves into our relationships, it settles into our timelines, and it shapes how we measure our lives. One of the most important things we want to say clearly in part 2 is this. If fear is still present after you name it, that does not mean the work failed. It means the work is ongoing. Fear does not disappear simply because you understand it. It changes as your life changes.
As responsibility grows, fear shifts. As attachment deepens, fear follows. As dreams become more meaningful, fear often gets louder, not quieter. Fear tends to show up most strongly where something matters most.
That is why fear does not stay in one place. It may begin as fear of uncertainty and then move into relationships, into health, into time, into questions about loss, meaning, and becoming. But part 2 is not about eliminating fear. It's about learning how fear lives with us over time and how to relate to it without letting it dictate our choices. Because the goal is not a fearless life. The goal is a life where fear no longer decides who you become. Before we go further, it helps to understand where fear actually comes from. Fear is not a flaw. It's a protective system. Fear originates in the brain's threat detection process. Its job is to keep you safe, not just physically, but emotionally, socially, and psychologically. The brain responds to perceived threat, not just actual danger.
That means fear can be activated by uncertainty, memory, anticipation, or loss. This is why fear does not always make logical sense. The body remembers experiences even when the mind knows that you're safe. Understanding this reduces shame. Fear is not a weakness, it's information.
Fear does not show up the same way for everyone. Some fear is about safety and survival. Fear of panic returning. Fear of not being able to sleep. Fear of illness or losing control of the body. This kind of fear is often learned through experience, not imagination.
Other fears about belonging and identity. Fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear of being too much or not enough. These fears quietly shape how people connect, communicate, and protect themselves.
And some fear is about meaning and time. Fear of being behind, fear of missing milestones, fear of never becoming who you thought you would be. These fears are quieter, but they carry weight.
Most of us carry more than one of these fears at the same time.
Before we go further, we want to pause and reframe something. Fear is often framed as something to conquer, but fear also has a positive role. Fear can signal that something matters, that you are stepping into growth, or that you are approaching intimacy, change, or meaning.
Fear can slow impulsive decisions. It can protect boundaries. It can invite reflection. The goal is not fearlessness. The goal is discernment. Which fears guide wisdom and which fears limit alignment.
Fear often shows up most strongly in relationships. Fear of being hurt again. Fear of choosing the wrong person. Fear of being too much or not enough. Fear of opening up and not being met.
This kind of fear can lead people to guard themselves, to overanalyze every interaction, to emotionally withdraw, or to overgive in hopes of being chosen.
There is a psychological reason this fear feels so intense. Behavioral economists Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky introduced something called prospect theory, which explains how humans make decisions under uncertainty. One of the key ideas from this theory is loss aversion. We experience the pain of loss more strongly than the pleasure of gain.
In relationships, this means the fear of losing connection, safety, or approval can outweigh the potential joy of intimacy, partnership, or love. The possibility of getting hurt can feel heavier than the possibility of being deeply fulfilled.
So instead of asking, "What do I want to build here?" fear asks, "What do I stand to lose?" And when loss aversion is driving, people make protective choices. They stay guarded to avoid rejection. They settle to avoid being alone. And they perform to prevent abandonment.
This is how fear quietly shapes behavior, not because people don't want to connect, but because their nervous system is trying to minimize loss.
Fear can make us perform instead of connect, protect instead of participate, settle instead of align. And often, we don't even realize fear is driving the behavior. We tell ourselves we're being practical, patient, or realistic, but underneath that story is loss aversion at work.
Awareness changes the equation. When you recognize that fear of loss is influencing your choices, you can pause and ask a different question. Am I choosing this because it aligns with who I am, or because I'm trying to avoid pain?
Before we move on, I want to offer a reflection. Think about one relationship or connection in your life right now. It could be romantic, professional, or personal. Ask yourself, what am I most afraid of losing in this relationship? Is it approval, stability, companionship, familiarity, or the image of what this relationship represents? Now ask, how is that fear shaping my behavior? Am I holding back honesty to avoid conflict? Am I overgiving to avoid being left? Am I staying silent to preserve comfort? Am I settling to avoid starting over? And finally ask, if I were not trying to avoid loss, what would alignment look like in this case? What would I say? What boundary would I set? What truth would I honor?
Loss aversion makes sense. It's human, but awareness gives you choice. You are allowed to choose a connection that is rooted in alignment, not just avoidance.
I want to share a personal example here. Years ago, I experienced anxiety-induced insomnia. What stayed with me was not just the lack of sleep, but the fear of not being able to sleep. That fear lingered even when the situation changed. Sometimes fear is not about the present moment. It's about the body remembering a past experience.
This kind of fear is protective, not imagined. The nervous system learns something once and tries to prevent it from happening again. What helps is not fighting fear, but reassuring the body that safety exists now.
There is another layer of fear I want to name: fear around health, fear of gaining or losing weight, fear of developing medical conditions that could impact daily life. Not necessarily because of appearance or surface concerns, but because I have seen the impact of health challenges on the people that I love. I've watched family members navigate limitations and loss of independence.
When fear is shaped by real experience, it carries a different weight. This is not imagined fear. It's fear informed by memory, grief, and love.
We have experienced so much permanent change or things we cannot reverse recently, such as the deaths of loved ones. And that accumulation, it changes you. It introduces a quiet question about mortality that many people carry. Will I live long enough to do the things I've dreamed of? This fear is not wrong. It's a very real experience that has to do with attachment, love, and hope. The challenge is holding awareness of mortality without letting it rush or harden us. There is another fear I want to name, one that many people deeply share. This fear often surfaces when people have done everything right and still feel uncertain. The fear of not getting married, the fear of not having children, the fear that time is moving faster than answers. This fear does not come from dissatisfaction with life. It comes from longing and meaning.
This fear feels heavy because it's tied to identity, legacy, and belonging. It's not just about milestones. It's about meaning, connection, and the hope to build a life that feels full.
This fear often shows up in subtle ways: at weddings, at baby showers, in passing comments that were never meant to hurt but still land. And once fear shows up, it starts asking questions. Did I wait too long? Did I choose one thing at the expense of another? Did I miss my chance?
There is a psychological layer here that helps explain why these questions feel so intense. It comes from something known as the Yerkes-Dodson law. This principle explains the relationship between anxiety and performance. A moderate level of anxiety can be motivating. It can encourage reflection, intentional choices, and action. But when anxiety becomes too high, it stops being helpful and it starts to be overwhelming.
Applied to life timelines, a small amount of concern can prompt healthy questions like, what do I want? What matters to me? And how do I want to live with intention? But when fear becomes excessive, it turns into pressure, urgency, comparison, self-blame. It can make people feel behind, defective, or panicked about time.
That's when fear stops supporting clarity and starts distorting reality. Instead of helping you make aligned choices, it pushes you to rush, settle, or abandon your own values just to quiet the anxiety. Fear creates false trade-offs. It tells people that choosing growth means forfeiting love. Honoring your path means abandoning something else. But life is not a checklist, and worth is not measured by timelines. The goal is not to eliminate concern about the future. It's to keep fear within a range where it informs reflection without hijacking self-trust.
Let's pause here for a moment. Take a slow breath and bring to mind one area of your life where time feels heavy right now. It could be relationships, family, career, or something else entirely. Now ask yourself, when I think about this part of my life, do I feel gently motivated or tightly pressured? Does this concern help me reflect with clarity, or does it make me feel rushed, anxious, or behind? Notice how your body responds as you ask that question. Pressure often manifests as chest tension, shallow breathing, or a sense of urgency. Healthy concern feels steadier. It leaves room for choice. Now ask, what story am I telling myself about time right now? Is it a story rooted in truth and compassion, or one rooted in comparison and fear? If this pressure could speak, what would it be asking me to do? Rush? Settle? Over-explain? Prove something? Or abandon my own values? And finally, what would it look like to lower the pressure without ignoring the desire? What is one way I can honor what I want without forcing the timeline?
Concern can guide reflection. Pressure distorts judgment. Learning the difference allows you to move forward with intention instead of fear.
This is where we want to bring back something we talked about in our belonging episodes. You are not behind. You are not incomplete. And you are not waiting to become whole. Belonging does not begin once you reach a milestone. It begins with how you relate to yourself right now.
A single version of the future does not define a whole life. It's defined by alignment, integrity, connection, and meaning across seasons.
The desire for partnership and family is valid, and not having those things yet does not mean you have failed or missed your moment. Fear tries to turn uncertainty into self-blame. Truth invites compassion and patience. Many people live caught between two fears: fear of choosing the wrong person or fear of ending up alone. Fear of being alone can push people into misaligned relationships. Fear of choosing wrong can keep people closed off entirely. Neither fear leads to peace. Both require self-trust. Self-trust to believe you can discern. Self-trust to believe you can recover. And self-trust to walk away or lean in when needed. Sometimes fear is layered with grief. Grief for what has not happened yet. Grief for imagined futures that feel delayed or uncertain.
And it is possible to hold grief and hope at the same time, to acknowledge longing without letting it harden into despair. Hope doesn't require guarantees, it requires openness.
Here is your next check-in. Notice, where is fear influencing how you show up in relationships and life decisions? Evaluate. Which fears are protective and which ones are limiting your openness or alignment? Experiment. Practice honesty over urgency, presence over pressure, alignment over timelines. Track. Observe how it feels to live from truth instead of fear-driven expectations. This check-in is not just about awareness, it's about movement. Before we close, we want to talk about why this matters. Mastering fear does not mean eliminating it. It means fear no longer runs the show.
Your next level can look like many things. Speaking up where you once stayed silent, starting what you've postponed, leaving what no longer aligns, staying present instead of constantly bracing.
When fear is mastered, clarity increases. You stop asking, how do I avoid discomfort? And start asking, what aligns with who I am becoming? Fear becomes a signal, not a stop sign. Information, not instruction.
Here's your closing reflection. What would it look like to trust your life without rushing it? What would it mean to believe that becoming does not expire? Fear asks, what if it never happens? Faith asks, how can I live fully right now? Fear does not disappear through force. It softens through safety, trust, and compassion.
Thank you for listening. If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who might feel unseen in their season. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at GoNextLevelU, and connect with us on LinkedIn and Facebook at Next Level U. That's NEXTLEVEL and the letter U. You can listen to the Next Level U podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and more through our link tree. Check our show notes for details. And remember, fear does not get to define your worth or rush your becoming. You are not late. You are living.